If you want to know how a psychopath can operate in the real world, look no further than UFC fighter Jon Jones.
This guy's got a lot of demons, man. A lot of demons.
Are you a good guy trying to be bad, or are you a bad guy trying to be good?
I hate you.
That's a good question.
Albuquerque police are still looking for UFC champ Jon Bones Jones for a hit-and-run crash that happened yesterday.
I think I am a bad guy that's trying to be good. Just because religiously we're all sinners.
The events in his life are nothing short of fascinating, being so dedicated to becoming the best fighter on earth.
Jon Jones is the youngest champion in UFC history!
But then a complete incapability to maintain order in his normal life. And his darkness is definitely something that needs to be studied.
We've got a possible DV call, professional MMA fighter, Jonathan Jones.
You're the f***ing scum of the earth. You are a terrible human being, but you can sure turn it on, huh?
Thank you.
Before we delve into the darker chapters of Jon Jones's life, it's important to understand his roots and where it all began. Jon was born into a family steeped in athletic prowess. His older brother Arthur and younger brother Chandler both made careers in the NFL, achieving notable success in professional football, whilst Jon took a different path, pursuing mixed martial arts. Athleticism and competition were core to the Jones family, but each sibling found a unique way to channel their talents. Growing up in a religious household with a pastor for a father.
This is the thing. We in this world are all empty vessels, right? And then you have obviously your soul. But what also changes and makes you who you are is trauma. Trauma makes you who you are today and how you deal with that trauma. You can become, a person that's malicious and wants to take everything out on the world and wants to be narcissistic and use people to their advantage and extract everything from the world. You can be a sort of empath type person where you want to be a people pleaser, a codependent, someone that just wants to help everyone. Or you could be somewhere in the middle. It all depends on how you handle trauma. Trauma does to a degree. How you handle trauma defines who you're going to be for the rest of your life. That's how it works. Sometimes people take longer than others. Sometimes people never figure it out. Sometimes people allow the trauma to control them. Some people use the trauma as an excuse to use everyone else in their world, But yeah, I was spitting. That's basically the gist, is that, trauma is an important aspect to life, but it's how you deal with the trauma. Dictates the person and the character you're going to be. It's as simple as that, really. So, in Jon's case, he had a traumatic thing that happened to him, and I'm not going to speak on the guy, I don't know him, but the truth of the matter is that, it changes you. And, I think trauma and more so losing people that you love, family, really does change you as a person. It makes you different. It makes you, to a degree, it makes you sharper. It makes you stronger, but it also changes you. You're no longer as innocent. You're no longer as you're not as naive, because you've seen the reality of the world. You've seen the most extreme measures of the world, which is death. That's probably the most extreme thing in this world, is death. So when you understand, you've seen it, you've seen people die, you understand that this world is no longer as luxurious as you once probably thought it to be. You understand that people come and go. You understand people die. You understand that people are, mortal. So you then start looking for reasons to cope. You start looking for answers. You start looking for reasons to keep going in this world. And that's what death does. Death gives you a reality check and sort of dictates how you want to live this world. It does. And, when you lose someone at a young age, God is giving you a blessing to say, hey, look, this isn't forever. I need you ready. I need you to be prepared for what is to come. I need you to be the man to take on the things that you need to take on, which is your purpose. So that's what happens with people. If people have lost a lot of people in this world, if you're someone out there that's lost a lot of people, a lot of loved ones, a lot of people you care about, God is preparing you for the purpose that you need to fulfill. It might be teaching people how to deal with grief. It might be teaching people in some sort of field. But God is trying to awaken you for something greater. And some people don't figure it out at all. Some people figure it out too late. Some people figure it out early. So it's not a straight line. It's a path that you must go on. But you need to understand that, yes, trauma is a part of life, grief is a part of life, but it creates who you're meant to be. So, yeah, that's the biggest life experience. The people that have gone through the most shit, the most turmoil, the most loss, that's the biggest life experience that God can give you. The reality of it all is death.
Search for meaning. This tragic event left a lasting mark on Jon, who as a teenager sought purpose and direction in life. During this period of soul searching, he discovered mixed martial arts, a discipline that will become his life's calling. Driven by a fierce determination, Jon set his sights on becoming a fighter, honing his skills with unmatched focus and intensity. Though his story would later be littered with controversy, as we'll get into, Jon's extreme talent and unrelenting drive are nothing short of superior. In his early years, he trained tirelessly, often sacrificing typical teenage pursuits for long hours in the gym, laser focused on one goal: to be the best.
Who was Jon when he first walked into the camp? Who was that guy?
He was an eager student. You know, Jon just wanted to learn, very eager to be the guy. You know, I remember we went out one time and he's like, "Oh man, what is it like to have, you know, people come up to you and want to take pictures?" And I'm like, one day you'll find out, you know.
And still counting,
He became one of the UFC's most promising fighters, even dropping out of college to chase his dreams. By the age of 23, he had achieved what many could only aspire. He became the youngest champion in UFC history.
Damn, for him being young, that should tell you a lot. Him being young and having all this success, yes, it was through hard work and dedication, but that comes with a cost. What someone in the other champions at that time would have learned a lot of life lessons before he did, because they've been around a lot longer. They got to the success a lot later, so they were already pretty much established who they are. Jon was still figuring himself out, you know, to a degree. So, fuck. He didn't have all the lessons and all the things figured out that the other champions did. So being the youngest to ever do it comes at a cost. You have to learn everything in front of the spotlight. You have to learn everything in front of the world, the public eye.
UFC history!
But with this unprecedented success came fame, and perhaps too soon. You
Correct.
see, sudden stardom and success, especially at such a young age, can contribute to what some would term a god complex. For someone as young and exceptionally talented as Jones, this swift rise to fame distorted the boundaries that ground most people.
And God will teach him a lesson with that, you know? He has to go through trials and tribulations. And I give Jon Jones credit because he's one of the only UFC fighters that credits Jesus Christ specifically. Others say God, others pray to native gods, which are demons, but he gives his full credit to Jesus Christ. Shout out to Jon Jones.
According to psychologists, excessive validation, especially at a formative age, can distort one's self-image. In Jon's case, constant praise and attention may have led him to feel as though the rules don't apply to him, creating a powerful sense of entitlement and narcissism. It's common for young athletes in Jon's position to develop a distorted reality where everything revolves around their talent and image. When young individuals like Jon achieve such monumental success, they often become isolated in an echo chamber where everyone tells them they're the best. This type of environment reinforces their self-belief to the point where they start to feel invincible. Fame amplifies this effect, with people in their orbit praising them, handling their problems, and sometimes even bending the rules on their behalf. For someone as young as Jon, these messages became a reality that could cloud judgment and encourage reckless behavior.
But again, you can't necessarily blame the guy, because all the lessons that every other UFC champion, athlete in the world that learned, you know, they did it behind the scenes. They didn't have the spotlight he did. Am I justifying what he did? No. Jon Jones did fuck up, right? He did mess up in his career. But bro, you can't be too hard on the guy too, because he had to learn everything that everyone else learned off camera.
Psychologically, there's also an element of brain development. Research shows that the human brain continues maturing well into one's mid-20s. particularly in areas related to decision making and impulse control. For
100%,
young champions,
because by the time you're age 25, you've sort of dictated, you're sort of getting towards, you know, the mature years of your life. So you've gone through all the trauma, you know? And like I said, some people go through it earlier, and that's true life experience, is suffering. That's the true embodiment of life experience. And I want to make that clear again. I want to repeat this. The true life experience as a human, especially as a man, is trauma. Trauma is life experience. It teaches you how to deal with grief. It teaches you how to deal with other people in a sad time. It teaches you how to be strong when other people can't. It teaches you, you know, how to be respectful in hard times, how to control your emotions, how to regulate your emotions, how to time things. It's a very important development that a man has to go through. And certain people need to go through more of it. Some people don't. You know, it's it's not necessarily a comfortable thing. It's a suffering. It sucks. But it makes you stronger for other people that are just going through that. Maybe you're 20 and you're going through all this bullshit of people dying, and then now, you know, someone that's same age as you is just losing their first loved one or whatever. You know how that feels. You can help them. God has put you in that position to help other people. Because if you weren't there, if you weren't fulfilling that purpose, those people that are going through that trauma might not be able to go through it, might not be able to live it, so they rely on you. So there's reasons for that. God has a bigger plan for everyone, whatever it may be, big or small. It's still a big plan, because your life's important. Your human experience is important. That will make it a unique human experience.
like Jon, navigating fame without a fully developed sense of long-term consequences can be dangerous. Unfortunately, Jon didn't have the proper support systems to manage these pressures healthily. With fame and fortune constantly fueling his lifestyle, he began to develop unhealthy coping mechanisms, eventually entangling his career with bouts of substance abuse and legal troubles. Jon's struggles with substance use can be traced back to his college years when he started drinking to manage his anxiety.
And I always felt like I needed alcohol to be cool, to conquer anxiety or whatever. I never really had the opportunity to develop a healthy relationship with it. It just went from high school to college when you get party even more to being famous. So I just, my relationship with alcohol, it became unhealthy, and I never went through a period of time where I had a healthy, mature, responsible relationship with it.
At first, alcohol may have seemed like a solution, a quick way to escape the pressures he faced. But as Jon's fame and success in the UFC grew, his drinking habit expanded to include different types of drugs, creating a cycle that became harder to control. This tendency to rely on substances as a form of relief is not uncommon amongst high-performing individuals. For many, reaching the pinnacle of success brings on immense pressure, and without healthy outlets, they may turn to self-destructive habits that threaten to unravel their achievements.
100%, man. This is the part of the human experience, right? This is it's tough.
There's a psychological phenomenon at play here, one seen in many successful individuals: the tendency towards self-destruction. After reaching a point of accomplishment through hard work and discipline, some people start to feel they've earned the right to indulge in potentially damaging habits, whether through overeating,
100%, because you build that high sense of self, that God complex that he was talking about before. You feel indestructible, and everyone else is, you know, that might not accomplish what you accomplished, they're self-destructing or they're drinking and those sorts of things. So you felt like you earned it. You feel like that you've hit yourself to such a level, you're not on the same bounds and rules as everyone else. So you can do those things. You could go extreme in one measure, but go extreme in another. And that's another psychological thing too. With athletes, with people that are in this social media game. To be able to make it, to be able to be the top of the game, you have to be self-obsessed. You have to be obsessed. You have to be addicted to the grind. So when you're addicted to the grind, you have an addictive personality. So God has given you that as a gift to get to the success, to make the impact that you need to in whatever field that you decide to endeavor in. But that can also go to a bad place too. That could go to a place of drugs, alcohol, addictions that are self-destructive towards your progress in your life. So you need to be careful. You need to really self-reflect. And not enough people do that. Not enough people, instead people try to distract themselves and self-indulge to remove that, to not hold themselves accountable. But you must self-reflect. You must identify who you are as a person. Not everyone is an addictive personality person. Some people are just in and out, very lucid, very relaxed, very, normal. But the people like myself and other people out there that have that addictive personality because of anxiety, trauma, things, maybe a chip on their shoulder, whatever it may be, it's important to realize that in the right place they can do a lot of good, but in the wrong place it could do a lot of bad. So you need to understand with an addictive personality, there's a trade-off. You need to harness it and put it in a good area. You need to put that habit, that complex into a healthy environment, and you can succeed.
Excessive partying, substance use, or other forms of escapism.
He likes to blow off a little bit of steam, and it's kind of like his ritual that he does where, it's like a little celebration to himself, and it's kind of like his thing where, he'll go and he'll party like 4 weeks before he fights, and then he'll finish the rest of his camp.
Blow off a little too literally, unfortunately.
Yeah, a little too literally.
Success brings new pressures, and ironically, the very habits that help reach the top can begin to give way to behavior that could bring it all crashing down. For Jon, several elements likely contribute to this self-destructive path. He had already developed a pattern of using alcohol to manage stress and anxiety in college, setting the groundwork for a coping mechanism that would escalate over time. After becoming the youngest UFC champion, the intense pressure and scrutiny of his status probably heightened his anxiety, pushing him towards more frequent and varied substance use as a form of release. His rise to fame may have fueled a sense of invincibility. As one of the most talented fighters in UFC history, Jon could have felt that no matter what he did, his natural ability would allow him to win. This feeling of being untouchable likely reinforced his willingness to take risks and engage in reckless behavior, as if he could party as hard as he wanted and still maintain his fighting prowess.
He takes risk in a cage, and he lives like that. He takes risks in his life too.
That's what I mean. Like when you become a specific person that's successful in an industry, a business, a career path, a purpose, there's a devil side to it too. Just like God's gift, there's another side to this. There's another side to that coin. That side to that coin is the trade-off of being an extremist, being an addicted personality. Those traits. Like, think about it, chat. If you're an extremist, or you have an addictive personality, that can trade off and go into a really bad place too. That could go into a place where basically, you might be really successful like Jon Jones, a fighter, MMA champion, youngest to ever do it. But you can also be, a self-indulged drug addict. That's really, really violent and very, very extreme when he's in that environment. That's why your environment is the most important aspect to your life. You need to put yourself as a responsible and adult in a good environment to succeed. Your environment is everything. So if you have an extreme addictive personality and you're a fighter, you're going to do well, right? If you're in a drug environment, you're going to do really bad and you're going to be the biggest drug addict out of everyone. You need to be careful where your environment is, who you have around you, your peers, your friends, your family, and etc. And really assess, is this a good place for you or not? And that's why self-reflection is important. And when people take drugs, when people self-indulge in drugs, what ends up happening, they become numb, they become dull, and they can't self-reflect. Because they're in this spiral of self-destruction, and they never get anywhere, and they're too scared to look themselves in the mirror and reflect. But you must do it. In 2024, as a man, you must self-analysis, you must do self-analysis, you must self-assess, and you must self-reflect. Those are the keys, the keys to the car, the key to success. All three.
And it's part of who he is.
I was able to win my fights, and I felt as if it really wasn't affecting me that bad. I would go out on the weekend, and then Monday morning I'd be the first guy to practice, working harder than everybody else. So I felt as if I can get away with that.
With high anxiety, the need for release, and a sense of grandiosity, Jon's pattern of drinking and drug use became a temporary escape between bouts of intense training and competition. But soon, this inability to curb these behaviors would threaten his career and reputation. As his substance abuse worsened, Jon started encountering legal trouble, tarnishing his public image and bringing instability into his career. After his championship win in March 2011, it took just over a year for the first major incident. In May 2012, Jon crashed his Bentley into a pole whilst driving under the influence. He was fined $1,000 and received a 6-month driving suspension. This incident marked the beginning of a pattern of legal and personal challenges that would follow him in the years to come. By January 2015,
he was young. This is the thing. I'm not justifying, but he was young. So when you're young, you need to get burned a few times, and it can be costly. It can be at the detriment of someone else. It can affect other people. You know, this is why self-accountability is important. But because he was on such a high, he couldn't. He just could not self-reflect. He didn't want to. And that's why
Jon faced off against his biggest career rival, Daniel Cormier.
That's what happens, chat, is you keep going down the self-destruction line.
A highly anticipated fight. Jon won, but it was revealed 3 days later that he had tested positive for cocaine before the bout. However, because this drug test was actually concluded over 30 days prior to the fight, the result didn't impact the official outcome, and Jon's victory stood. Yet the public scrutiny intensified. As part of what seemed like an effort to address the issue, Jon checked himself into a rehab facility, but this commitment was short-lived. His mother later revealed that he left the facility after just 1 night, underscoring his ongoing struggle to confront his substance abuse. These incidents highlight the complexities of addiction. Many individuals turn to substances to mask deep-seated anxieties, escape stress, or fill emotional voids. For Jon, this cycle of relief, followed by guilt and self-doubt, was a manifestation of cognitive dissonance, a psychological state where one's actions conflict with their values and beliefs, creating a profound sense of inner turmoil. Jon publicly valued hard work, discipline, and dedication, yet his substance use contradicted those values. Every relapse likely deepened his inner conflict, feeding a cycle that often leads to more self-destructive behavior. He would later claim that he wasn't a regular cocaine user, but had simply been caught slipping.
Ariel, look at that in your eyes. I don't like coke. I'm not a coke guy. I tried cocaine one night and the athletic commission's there the next day. How in the world did this just go down? How did it happen this way?
According to Jon, his drug use wasn't habitual. He was influenced by the party environment and tried cocaine out of curiosity.
Environment's a key factor, but you know, why is he there? Because it's in you, it's personal. Like, this is the thing too. Another psychological spit game is that your inner trauma and how you deal with it is a manifestation in this world. So, you know, you'll notice if you haven't dealt with certain things in your life or previous life or in your personal life, what will end up happening is it will manifest out and you'll start gravitating towards things to cope with it, to make up for the lack of reflection and dedication to dealing with that problem, which will, it's like fixing a bunch of holes with sticky tape. It's not going to last. It's like, you know, a gun. It's like a gun wound with a band-aid. It ain't gonna last. So that's why, again, self-reflection is important. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to sit there in the mirror and self-reflect, but you got it. At any level, big or small, 9 to 5, Jon Jones, top streamer Beau Riddla, like, it doesn't matter. You gotta just do it. You must. Self-accountability. You're the only person that's going to hold yourself accountable, chat.
However, this tendency to indulge in reckless behavior when in social settings was a dangerous pattern that ultimately led to even bigger problems. And after a night of partying and drinking, the biggest controversy of his life would ensue.
Could I ask what's your biggest regret?
My biggest regret out of everything, it was hitting the pregnant woman in that hit-and-run car accident.
The guy that's getting out of the SUV, he took off running.
Dude, I wonder if this is that fighter's car. Jon Jones? Well, he's fucked. Yeah, he is.
In 2015, things would take a darker turn. Following the night of one of his parties, he would run a red light and crash into another vehicle, which then collided with a third vehicle. Jon, in a state of panic, would immediately flee the scene.
Police are still looking for UFC champ Jon Jones for a hit-and-run crash that happened yesterday.
This is a clear as day example of a manifestation of not self-reflecting, not being able to hold yourself accountable, not dealing with your problems. This is what happens. It damages other people. You then start being not just self-destructive, but destructive towards the world.
First, I realized I wasn't hurt. So, you know, I think subconsciously I just figured, all right, nobody's gotten hurt. You know, I'm not hurt. Maybe we didn't hit that hard. I just thought to myself, man, I probably still smell like the night before. I need to get myself out of here.
Rather than see if the other parties involved in the crash were okay, he was only worried about how bad it would look on him if law enforcement came and smelled the alcohol on him. He assumed because he was okay, the other parties were okay, when in reality, anything could have happened to them. There could have been a kid in the car for all he knew. Instead, he fled. This shows narcissistic traits, self-centeredness, and a lack of empathy. Because what turned out to be the case was that the lady in the car he hit was actually pregnant. Luckily, she didn't suffer any fatal injuries, however that wouldn't have been to Jon's knowledge at the time. Even when questioned about how he felt after hearing about who he hit, the self-centeredness still prevailed.
When you found out that there was a pregnant lady who was injured, what was your reaction to that?
I started thinking about the fact that I could go to jail for the rest of my life. I was miserable. I was extremely depressed. You know, I was just thinking about the fact that I could never see my kids again and my wife again. So it was a lot for me. At that time, I wasn't even thinking about fighting again. I was just thinking about, you know, my freedom being taken away.
Talking about the event and how he reacted after hearing it was a pregnant lady, Jon mentions himself before the victim, thinking about his freedom being taken away instead of expressing any remorse.
Lack of empathy, like he said, you know, narcissistic, for sure, you know. He just cared about himself, his own world, his own reality. He didn't care about anyone else, you know. It's, yeah, it's pretty bad, self-centeredness.
Guilt towards the victim, again showing that lack of empathy and proving his narcissistic self-centeredness. The thing is, to make it to the top of industries like sport or business, arrogance is often needed.
Yep, even in the industry we're in right now, on YouTube and Kick and etc., streaming, influencing, social media, arrogance, self-entitlement, it's a very narcissistic world, a very narcissistic realm, and you gotta sort of channel that to be successful, but you need to also check yourself and self-reflect. It's important.
Arrogance often breeds narcissism. Jon Jones, having to make sure the UFC world centers around him and his success he's had as a fighter, may have slipped into the real world, where he believes it's all about him. That same entitlement and strong ego stood out in a moment like this. Jon turned himself into authorities the following day and was released on $2,500 bail. Subsequently, the UFC stripped him of his light heavyweight title and suspended him indefinitely. With this whole scenario, psychologists call this moral disengagement, a state where one's mind rationalizes harmful actions to protect the self-image. This allows a person to detach from the morality of their actions, justifying their behavior to avoid facing guilt. For Jones, his success may have fed his sense of invincibility, making accountability a foreign concept, which made him able to flee the scene to protect himself. And although this was one of his lowest ever points and he vowed for a change in his behavior, Jon Jones would continue to be the villain.
Hey, are you still there?
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. You're just the fakest person. I actually admire that you can actually be this fake, and like when the TV comes on, how you can just change. It's like you're a chameleon.
One of the most notorious rivalries in UFC history was between Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier. Their verbal sparring became as iconic as their physical clashes in the ring. But for Jones, the rivalry seemed to feel something deeper, a need to dominate his opponent, not just physically but psychologically. Now, I don't want to get the lines blurred because trash talk is completely normal and almost necessary in combat sports to sell more tickets. They typically don't have a real hatred for each other but pretend to for the fight, and that may have been the case here, but I believe there's a bit more to it for us to analyze.
You are just terrible. You're the f***ing scum of the earth. You are a terrible human being, but you can sure turn it on, huh?
Thank you.
Jon had been so dominant in his career at this point, but I think there were two reasons that Daniel Cormier brought out his best performances but the worst of his character. DC was his most skilled opponent yet, and Jon may have had a genuine fear of losing to him. This may have been why he believed if he could dominate him psychologically, it could weaken him for the fight. To add on to this point, DC was in a better life position at this time.
You take control of the mind, you take control of the body. It's just like yourself. If you're controlling your mind, you're controlling your body. So if you're eating poorly, you don't have control over your mind. If you're eating good, you have control over your mind, which then controls your body. Same with going to the gym, making that decision. So if you can fuck an opponent up psychologically, it's going to throw them off their game. They're so disillusioned and shocked, they can't mentally get back into it, which then their body can't get into it, meaning the fight.
He had a family, no legal troubles, and fit into that role model persona that Jon couldn't fulfill. And this caused Jon to reach into that arrogant side of his.
I'm sitting on 10 mil, baby. What you sitting on? You're more money than you and your whole family.
Doesn't matter.
However, this didn't come without DC's own comments, ones that would trigger Jon.
I wish they would let me next door so I can spit in your f***ing face.
You know I would absolutely kill you if you ever did something like that,
You
right?
could never kill me.
Oh, I bet you I could. I'm not saying I would fight you. I said I would kill you if
John,
you did some
do you think?
stupid shit like that.
So, John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John?
You see that switch on Jon's face, that he is literally considering murder if he was spat on, whilst Daniel Cormier thinks it's still trash talk. There's a darkness behind those eyes, a man who is definitely capable of evil, but knows how to turn it on and off for the cameras, a chameleon, as DC called him. Jones would win both fights against DC, however on the second fight, he proved that he did have that fear of Cormier, as he got caught using steroids, and the fight would be ruled a no contest. Using PEDs and lying about it was straight up deception from Jon. He lied to his fans, he ruined DC's self-image, making him think he lost fair and square, and he showed how his ego craves domination. He won the first fight, but he didn't finish or submit Cormier, it went the distance. So maybe this time, to ensure full physical and psychological domination, he had to cheat to ensure he got that finish. Studies indicate that individuals with these tendencies view rivals as personal threats, pushing them to crush the competition by any means necessary. For Jones, this need to be the best at all costs was a central theme in his life, and his downfall. I mentioned Jon being a chameleon, knowing how to change for the cameras whilst being different in private, and although he again vowed to change, things would continuously get worse. Jon hadn't kept his nose clean after being banned from the PED usage. He was once again arrested for driving under the influence.
Reach behind the passenger seat, grab me that open bottle.
Crazy, crazy, man. This is what I mean. When you get famous at a young age, it comes at a cost. And, you know, I think, like, in my life, that I've gone through certain things, God has tested me for that. And, you know, my time will come. My come up will come. But, you know, it's in time. And some people got to go on a different journey to become a lesson, too. Like, Jon Jones is a lesson, what he went through. For future fighters, future influencers, future athletes, he himself, what he went through is a good, you know, a good indicator of what not to do. And he had to go through that maybe for the world to see as well, to teach the world a lesson.
By any means necessary. For Jones, this
if you
needs
want
to
to
be
look
the
at
best
it from a philosophical perspective, I mean, not just in general, but more philosophical.
Cost was a central theme in his life, and his downfall. I mentioned Jon being a chameleon, knowing how to change for the cameras whilst being different in private, and although he again vowed to change, things would continuously get worse. Jon hadn't kept his nose clean after being banned from the PED usage. He was once again arrested for driving under the influence.
Reach behind the passenger seat, grab me that open bottle.
Crazy, chat.
A recurring issue with alcohol and vehicles that Jon was still unable to prevent himself falling back into, but this wouldn't be his worst moment. Jon would be inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, a great achievement. However, the same night of this accomplishment, the police would have to get involved in Jon's family life.
Got a possible DV call, domestic violence call. Female is bleeding from the nose and mouth while the male is up at the room. And he's actually a professional MMA fighter, Jonathan Jones.
Do you have a name for her at all?
Jesse Moses.
Jon would celebrate by heading to the strip club with $10K in cash, before returning home, apparently drunk, and in front of his own kids, Jon would assault his fiancée. Police responded to the report, and when arresting Jon, he proved once more how his
That's what I mean, chat. Like, that's a broken thing to do. Like, when you physically assault a woman, like when you've done that, you've crossed the line, which even for Jon Jones himself would have realized that that's, yeah, not good. It's not good. It's terrible. That's the worst thing you can do, chat. Don't ever do that.
How psychology operates.
Officer Nerd, calm down, bro. Heard me in my Hall of Fame night just because I'm big and black. A black man can't drink, getting elected into the Hall of Fame, and now this is what I got.
Instead of acknowledging his wrongdoings, or at the very least just staying quiet and waiting for his lawyer, Jon stoops to the level of self-victimization and deflection that makes it hard to even feel sorry for him.
No accountability, man. You can't feel sorry for that. You can't feel sorry for that. The non-accountability, man. Like, fuck. That's, you know, you just hit a woman in front of your children and you can't even hold yourself accountable as a man. That's...
It's because I'm black card. In a situation where you just abused your fiancé is bottom barrel, and the continuous pointing out of it being his night, his
I hope
special
you realise, chat. Hope you realise, you know? Hope you realise.
Into the Hall of Fame completely confirms his narcissism and grandiosity. Just like how he didn't care for the woman he crashed into, only worrying about himself and potential legal troubles, he now doesn't care about the love of his life that he just harmed, but instead, he's the one hard done by. This was his first time getting caught for something like this, and she was very hesitant to tell the police the details, so we can only imagine what else would have happened that didn't get reported. This incident marked a critical point in Jones' story, delving into traits associated with psychopathy, impulsivity, disregard for consequences, and manipulation. While psychopathy isn't a clinical diagnosis for Jones, his behavior fits certain patterns, such as a lack of empathy and poor impulse control. In this moment, his outburst about race showcased a deflection, an attempt to evade responsibility by shifting the narrative away from his actions. Jon Jones' story is a study in contrast. The athlete who reached legendary heights, but was weighed down by his own dark psychology. His tale warns of what happens when talent meets unchecked ego and unresolved demons. It's a story without a clear end, as Jones remains haunted by the same struggles. This analysis isn't a diagnosis, but rather a lens through which we can understand Jon Jones' choices. Narcissism, addiction, cognitive dissonance, and perhaps even psychopathy. These elements intertwine to shape a man both gifted and troubled. Ultimately, the dark psychology of Jon Jones is a reminder that fame and talent can come with a steep price.
It can, and this is the thing, it's not just about that, it's who you are. When people talk about Jon Jones, as much as he's a successful UFC fighter, he has all that baggage too. Do you want to be remembered for that? Do you want to leave your impact like that, you know? You need to really think as you as a person, as a man, as a human, what your impact is going to be and how you want to be remembered. That's what counts, because you don't want to be remembered like that. It's not good, chat. Not good. It's, yeah, you don't want to be remembered like that. But he taught a lesson to the world. Be careful what you wish for, be careful of the success and what comes with it.